Have you ever paused in the quiet of an afternoon, feeling the weight of years past and the subtle dread of what is yet to come? Marcel Proust, in his masterwork In Search of Lost Time, turns such moments into a profound inquiry into the nature of existence, where time whispers secrets of mortality and memory. Today, we delve into how Proust's literary quest mirrors our own search for meaning in the face of life's transience, offering insights that resonate deeply with those reflecting on their journey through middle and later years. This exploration promises not just an intellectual engagement, but a gentle guide to finding solace in the fleeting beauty of our experiences. The bonds that unite another person to ourself exist only in our mind. Memory upon waking forgets them, and it is as if we had never seen the person before. Marcel Proust. There is a river that runs through all of us, not of water, but of moments. It is a strange current, one that does not flow in a straight line from birth to death. It pools in the quiet eddies of childhood, rushes through the rapids of our working years, and sometimes, in the dead of night, it seems to flow backward, carrying us to shores we thought were long submerged. Marcel Proust, a man who spent much of his life in a cork-lined room, charted this river better than any explorer. His great, sprawling work, In Search of Lost Time, is not so much a novel as it is a map of this internal, temporal landscape. He saw time not as the steady ticking of a clock on the mantelpiece, a reliable servant measuring out our days. For him, it was something more akin to the weather, a force, a fog that rolls in and obscures the past, a sudden burst of sunlight that illuminates a forgotten detail with blinding clarity. Time was the great sculptor and the great destroyer, carving new lines into a familiar face in the mirror while simultaneously grinding mountains of memory into fine, indistinguishable dust. Imagine a man in his late 50s, sorting through a box of old photographs. He finds one of himself at 20, standing on a beach, squinting into the sun. He remembers the day, or he thinks he does. He remembers the scratchy wool of the sweater and the briny taste of the air. But the young man in the photograph is a stranger. The certainty in his eyes, the unlined confidence of his posture, who was he? The man holding the picture and the man in the picture are two different people, separated not by distance, but by the vast, uncrossable chasm of 40 years. Time has not simply added age, it has replaced oneself with another, then another. This is the essence of Proust's exploration. His narrator spends thousands of pages observing this very process, watching as friends, lovers, and even he himself are continuously remade by time's relentless invisible hand. The vibrant socialites of the Parisian salons become frail, their wit dulled, their beauty a rumor. The passions that once seemed capable of shaking the foundations of the world cool into quiet embers of tolerant affection, or worse, indifference. This unyielding flow is the quiet whisper of mortality that Proust sought to capture. It is the understanding that everything is ephemeral. The love we feel today, the convictions we hold, the very person we believe ourselves to be, all are subject to revision without notice. It is a disquieting thought. Yet Proust did not present this as a tragedy. Instead, he saw it as the fundamental condition of life, the source of its depth and meaning. For if time erodes, it also enriches. It is the accumulation of these lost selves, these faded moments, that creates the complex tapestry of a life. The past is not gone, it is simply absorbed, becoming the soil from which our present self grows. We are, in Proust's world, walking museums of our own former identities.
If time is an inescapable current pulling us toward dissolution, is there any hope of reprieve? Can we ever truly go back? Proust's answer is both no and a resounding yes. We cannot consciously will ourselves back to the past. The effort of voluntary memory, the deliberate act of trying to recall a fact, a name, a date, is, for Proust, a sterile exercise. It retrieves only a ghost, a lifeless photograph of the moment, stripped of all sensation and emotion. It is the intellect's clumsy attempt to do the soul's work. But there is another way, a secret passage. Proust gave it a name that has since become famous: involuntary memory. It is not a thought, but an ambush, a sensation in the present, a taste, a smell, the feel of an uneven paving stone underfoot, suddenly and violently unlocks a door in the mind, and a whole, complete moment from the past rushes in, alive and breathing. The most famous key to this passage is a simple, shell-shaped sponge cake. The narrator, a grown man, is cold and weary. His mother offers him a cup of lime blossom tea and a small cake, a madeleine. He dips the cake into the tea and lifts it to his lips. And then it happens. No sooner had the warm liquid mixed with the crumbs touched my palate, and I stopped, intent upon the extraordinary thing that was happening to me. An exquisite pleasure had invaded my senses, something isolated, detached, with no suggestion of its origin. He doesn't know what it is. He tries to force the memory, to intellectually summon its source, but the magic recedes. Only when he relaxes, clears his mind, and tastes it again, does the memory finally surface, not as a thought, but as a resurrection. And suddenly the memory revealed itself. The taste was that of the little piece of madeleine which, on Sunday mornings at Cambrai, my Aunt Leonie used to give me, dipping it first in her own cup of tea. The entire world of his childhood in the country town of Cambrai rises up, complete and solid. The gray house, his aunt's room, the streets, the gardens, the water lilies on the Vivonne River. He is there. The intervening years have vanished. This is more than nostalgia. For Proust, these moments of involuntary memory are glimpses of eternity. In that flash of recognition, the past and present cease to be separate. The self that was and the self that is become one. For that brief, sacred instant, time is defeated. The boy in Cambrai and the man in Paris are the same being, living the same moment. This experience is a profound rebellion against mortality, for it proves that nothing is ever truly lost. It is all there, dormant, waiting for the right sensory key to awaken it. It suggests that our lives are not a linear sequence of events that disappear behind us, but a vast, layered reality where all our moments exist simultaneously, stacked one upon the other. A woman walks down a city street in late autumn. A gust of wind carries the smell of burning leaves from a distant park. It is a smell she has not consciously registered for decades. But now, in a single heart-stopping second, she is no longer on a concrete pavement. She is a child of 8, standing in her grandfather's backyard. She can feel the damp chill of the evening air on her cheeks, see the orange glow of the small bonfire against the deepening twilight, and hear the gentle, crinkling sound of her grandfather's rake pulling the dry leaves into a pile. She can even feel the phantom weight of his hand on her shoulder. The feeling is so complete, so real, that she stops walking. The traffic, the noise of the city, all of it fades into a distant hum. For a few precious seconds, her grandfather is not gone. The yard is not sold. The child is not a memory. They are real. Then, just as quickly as it came, the sensation recedes, leaving behind an ache that is both sweet and sad. Time's whisper has returned, but for a moment she heard a different song. But time's destructiveness is not merely a matter of linear erosion, of sanding down the sharp edges of memory until they are smooth and featureless. It is also a work of insidious artistry, a kind of internal forgery. Proust understood that the mind, in its desperate attempt to create a coherent narrative of the self, is a constant and unreliable editor of its own past. When we voluntarily remember, we are not accessing a pure, untouched archive. Instead, we are consulting a version of history that has been revised, annotated, and often completely rewritten by our present selves. The loves we now deem foolish are recast in our memory with premonitions of their eventual failure, premonitions we never actually had at the time. The triumphs that have since been overshadowed are retroactively diminished, their initial brilliance dimmed by the knowledge of what came after. Our intellect, acting as a loyal servant to our current ego, tidies up the past. It smooths over the inconsistencies and explains away the moments of humiliation. It builds a logical cause and effect chain leading directly to the person we are today, making our current state feel inevitable, a planned destination rather than a series of accidental arrivals. This is the great lie of voluntary memory. It presents us with a past that is intelligible but lifeless. It gives us the story but steals the experience. Proust's narrator is a connoisseur of this self-deception, watching himself and others perform this constant, unconscious curation of their own histories. He observes how Swann, in recounting his tormented love for Odette, subtly shifts the emphasis of events, presenting his own jealousy not as the chaotic, all-consuming madness it was, but as a series of justifiable reactions to concrete betrayals. The memory has been domesticated, made safe for conversation and contemplation. The wild beast of the lived experience has been caged by the intellect. This process extends beyond personal history to our very perception of others. The friend we meet for lunch after a decade apart is not merely an older version of the person we knew. Our mind struggles to reconcile the image in our memory, vibrant, foolish, full of specific hopes and anxieties we were privy to, with the composed stranger sitting opposite, whose past 10 years are a complete blank to us. We search their face for the old landmarks, but they are obscured by new lines of worry or contentment. In that gap, our mind rushes to fill the void. We project our own assumptions. We interpret their quietness as sadness or their cheerfulness as a facade. We are essentially interacting with a ghost of our own creation, a composite of old memory and present-day conjecture. Proust saw society as a hall of mirrors where no one ever truly sees another person. Instead, we see the reflection of our own idea of them, an idea hopelessly out of date, colored by our own needs, jealousies, and affections. The real person, the one living and changing in the relentless flow of their own private time, remains forever inaccessible. This is why love, in Proust's world, is so often a tragedy of mistaken identity. We do not fall in love with a person, but with an image we have constructed in the darkroom of our own mind. The narrator's obsessive love for Albertine is not truly about Albertine herself, a woman who remains, to the very end, a mysterious collection of contradictory signals and unknowable actions. His love is for the idea of Albertine, an idea he endlessly embellishes, analyzes, and torments himself over. He tries to possess her, to know her every thought and her every past action, not because he wishes to understand her, but because he needs to make the real, external Albertine conform to the detailed, intricate image he holds within him. It is an impossible project, doomed to failure. Because the real Albertine is subject to the law of time. She is changing, evolving, existing outside of his mental blueprint. The beloved is always a fugitive, and the lover a detective chasing a suspect whose appearance is constantly changing. The suffering this causes is immense, but for Proust it is the fundamental engine of passion. Love is the ultimate and most painful proof that we are islands of consciousness, and the bridges we think we build to others are spun from the fragile thread of our own imagination. The social world, too, is a theater of temporal illusions. The great Parisian salons, like those of Madame Verdurin or the Duchesse de Guermantes, are presented by Proust not as static environments, but as ecosystems in constant flux. Reputations rise and fall with the caprice of a powerful hostess. An artist lauded one season is dismissed as a bore the next. A witty remark can secure a man's social standing for a year, while a clumsy gesture can render him invisible. Proust meticulously documents these subtle shifts in social weather, showing how an individual's value is not inherent, but is conferred upon them by the ever-changing consensus of the group. Consider the character of Charles Swann. In the early parts of the narrative, he is a figure of immense prestige, an intimate of the Prince of Wales, a man whose quiet expertise in art lends him an almost mystical aura in the eyes of the narrator's family. Yet, when he marries the socially unsuitable Odette, his stock plummets. He is gradually excluded from the most exclusive circles. The very qualities that once made him seem distinguished are now reinterpreted as eccentricities. Later, after his death, time works another transformation. As the social landscape shifts and the old prejudices of the Guermantes set begin to crumble, Swann's name is revived. His artistic judgment is celebrated once more. His love affair with Odette is romanticized, and he becomes a legendary figure of a bygone era. Which was the real Swann? The revered aesthete? The social outcast? The posthumous legend? For Proust, he was all of them and none of them. Each version was a temporary truth, a fleeting role assigned to him by the collective, time-bound consciousness of his society. We are who others, at a specific point in time, decide we are. Our social identity is a costume, loaned to us for a scene, which will be taken back and given to another actor when the play moves on. This relentless metamorphosis also applies to places. A place is not just a set of geographical coordinates. It is a vessel for our feelings and experiences. The town of Cambrai is not one Cambrai, but many. There is the Cambrai of childhood, a magical kingdom where a walk to the Guermantes way is an epic journey into the unknown. This Cambrai is vast, full of mystery and possibility. Then there is the Cambrai revisited by the adult narrator, who is shocked to find how small it all is. The two ways for his walks, which in his childhood mind were oriented in completely opposite directions, are in reality just short strolls from the same town square. The physical place has not changed, but the inner landscape it corresponds to has shrunk. The magic has been drained away by the disenchantment of adult knowledge. Similarly, the seaside resort of Baalbek is transformed. On his first visit, it is a place of breathtaking wonder, dominated by its ancient Persian-style church and the mythical presence of the sea, a human, mobile, and living entity. It is also the stage for his burgeoning adolescent desires, embodied by the gang of girls, a band of goddesses. On a later visit, years after the death of his grandmother who accompanied him the first time, Baalbek becomes a chamber of grief. The same hotel room, the same view of the sea, once sources of joy, are now instruments of torture. Every detail is saturated with her absence. The act of bending down to unbutton his boots, a task his grandmother used to help him with, unleashes a tidal wave of sorrow, a form of involuntary memory, but one that brings not ecstatic unity with the past, but the agonizing, unbridgeable reality of loss. The place is the same. Its soul has been ripped out and replaced with pain. A place, for Proust, is never just a place. It is a state of mind, a repository of a specific era of our soul. When we change, the places of our past change with us, even if they remain physically untouched. If involuntary memory offers a fleeting victory over time's linear progression, what is its lasting purpose? Is it merely a source of beautiful but ultimately useless moments of ecstasy? For Proust, the answer lies in its connection to art. These moments are not an end in themselves. They are a revelation. They reveal to the narrator the true nature of reality, showing him that the essential part of our lives exists outside the tick-tock of chronological time, in a dimension where past and present can coexist. This realization is what finally gives him his vocation as a writer. The purpose of art, he concludes, is to capture these transcendent moments. It is to take the feeling resurrected by the taste of the Madeleine, or the sound of a spoon against a plate, or the sensation of a starched napkin, and translate it from the private, ephemeral realm of personal sensation into a durable, universal form. The artist is a kind of translator, decoding the messages sent from his own submerged past. The novel, In Search of Lost Time, is itself the ultimate result of this process. The narrator's journey is not just a search for lost time, but a search for the means to conquer it. He finds the means not in living, but in writing.
Art becomes a second, more permanent form of involuntary memory, one that can be shared. By crafting his sentences with meticulous care, by tracing the intricate psychological pathways that lead from a sensation to a resurrected world, the artist creates a Madeleine. He builds a verbal structure that allows us, his audience, to experience a shadow of his own transcendent moment. We may not have a Tante Leone or a Cambrai, but through the magic of his prose, we can access the feeling of a lost world bursting forth into the present. We can feel the shiver of recognition, the sense of time collapsing. This is why Proust's style is so famously complex, with its long, winding sentences that loop back on themselves, that hold multiple clauses in suspension before reaching their final resolution. The sentence structure is a deliberate attempt to mimic the way consciousness actually works, not in short declarative statements, but in a layered associative flow. He needs to capture the initial sensation, the moment of confusion, the intellectual struggle to identify it, and the final explosive revelation, all within the architecture of a single thought. His prose is the very shape of memory's ambush. Ultimately, the revelation delivered by involuntary memory is a paradoxical one. It affirms our mortality by showing us just how much of ourselves has been lost to the past, how many former selves lie buried within us. But it also offers us a glimpse of our own immortality by proving that nothing is ever truly gone. It is all still there, waiting. Art, for Proust, is the sacred mission of excavating these buried selves and holding them up to the light. It is the only way to give our fleeting, transient lives a measure of permanence. The writer, through his work, builds a time machine, not of metal and gears, but of words and sensations.
It cannot take us back to live in the past, but it can do something more profound. It can bring the essence of the past, its living, breathing soul, into the eternal now. The final message is not one of despair at the unyielding flow of time, but one of hope in the redemptive power of art to find the timeless within the temporal. It is a way of saying that while our individual lives are finite and forever being washed away, the feeling of what it was to be alive, in all its sorrow and its splendor, can be saved. This degradation of the self over time is aided by a powerful and insidious accomplice, habit. For Proust, habit is the great anesthetist of life. It is the force that papers over the mysteries of the universe with the bland wallpaper of the everyday. When we first move into a new house, every creak of the floorboards, every slant of light through a window is a novel sensation. But soon, habit takes over. We cease to see the light. We no longer hear the floor. They become part of an unexamined background. The same is true of the people we love. The initial miracle of their existence, the captivating strangeness of their gestures and their way of speaking, gradually becomes smoothed over by daily proximity. Habit draws a veil over them, and we cease to truly see them, interacting instead with a mental shorthand, a familiar summary of their being. This is why time seems to accelerate as we age. The years become filled with the featureless terrain of habit, with fewer and fewer new sensations to serve as landmarks. The only antidote is a shock to the system, a journey to a foreign land, a sudden illness, or the eruption of a new love, which temporarily shatters the glass casing of habit and allows us to perceive the world and ourselves with a raw and startling clarity once more.
Yet, even these moments of awakening are destined to be colonized by habit in their turn. The new love becoming a comfortable routine, the exotic city becoming just another set of streets. Habit is time's quietest agent of erasure. The instability of our identity is rehearsed each night in the theater of sleep. For Proust, sleep is not a mere pause in existence, but a descent into a primeval state where the self dissolves completely. The sleeper is unmoored from his name, his history, his body. He is a creature of pure sensation, adrift on the dark tides of unconsciousness. The process of waking is therefore a moment of profound ontological panic. For a few terrifying seconds, the mind is a blank slate, frantically searching for its coordinates in time and space. Who am I? Where is this room? What life do these limbs belong to? Consciousness must reassemble itself piece by piece, clinging to the thread of a memory, the position of a piece of furniture, the feel of the blankets, to pull itself back into the coherent narrative of its own life. This daily struggle for self-recollection is a miniature version of the larger battle against time's annihilating force. Dreams, in this context, are not mere fantasies, but are the chaotic workshops of the soul. They are a form of involuntary memory cut loose from logic, where fragments of our past, the face of a long-dead relative, the anxiety of a childhood exam, the taste of a forgotten medicine, are fused together into surreal and terrifying new compounds. A dream is the ultimate proof that our past is not a tidy archive, but a volatile living substance that works on us even when our conscious mind is absent. This desperate need to stabilize a world in flux finds its most pathological expression in the torment of jealousy. The jealous lover, as Proust portrays him, is engaged in a monstrous intellectual project, the complete and total colonization of the beloved's past. Because Albertine's present self is unknowable, and her future is a realm of infinite potential betrayals, the narrator turns his formidable intellect toward her past, a territory he imagines can be definitively mapped and conquered. He becomes a crazed historian, an archaeologist of her soul, spending sleepless nights sifting through every casual remark she ever made, every acquaintance she ever mentioned, searching for clues to a hidden life. He tortures her with questions, not to understand her, but to force the chaotic, lived reality of her youth into a fixed narrative that he can possess and control.
This intellectual pursuit of a phantom past is the quintessence of voluntary memory's destructive power. It yields nothing but misery and further suspicion, as every uncovered fact only opens up new avenues of doubt. More profoundly, it annihilates the present. A shared moment, a drive in the countryside, or an evening of music ceases to be an experience to be lived and becomes instead an opportunity for interrogation, a chance to cross-examine his prisoner. Jealousy is the mind's futile war against the simple, terrible truth that another person is a separate universe, with a past, present, and future that will forever exist outside of our grasp. The gap between our internal construction of a person and their external reality extends into the very names we give them. For the young narrator, a name is not a simple label, but a vessel, a magic vase, filled with the accumulated dreams and desires he has projected onto it. The name Guermantes is the most potent of all. It is not the name of a family. It is the name of a fairy tale. It evokes the golden light of stained glass windows in the church at Cambrai, the tapestries of medieval knights, and a whole mythology of aristocratic grace. When he finally penetrates this world and meets the Duchesse de Guermantes, the reality is a brutal disenchantment. She is a mortal woman with a red nose and a slightly shrill voice. The collision between the imagined, timeless essence contained in the name and the mundane, time-bound reality of the person causes a kind of psychic injury. The magic evaporates. This same process applies to places. The name Baalbek conjures visions of Persian architecture and tempestuous Gothic seas long before he ever visits. Proust shows us that we live first and foremost in a world of our own linguistic and imaginative creation, a world whose grandeur is almost always diminished upon contact with the physical thing itself. Time, in this sense, is the slow, painful process of being forced to exchange the magnificent, self-created world of names for the smaller, plainer world of objects and people. Beyond sight and taste, sound itself becomes a powerful conduit for these temporal resurrections. Music, in particular, offers a unique key. For Swann, a little phrase from a violin sonata by the composer Vinteuil becomes inextricably linked with his love for Odette. It precedes their love, accompanies its blossoming, and returns to haunt him after its decay. The phrase becomes, in his mind, the national anthem of their love. Unlike the Madeleine, which resurrects a specific, detailed scene from the past, the musical phrase is more abstract. It does not bring back an image of Odette's face or the color of her dress. Instead, it resurrects the pure, disembodied essence of the emotion itself, the unique, bittersweet quality of his initial hope, the soaring joy of its consummation, the anxiety of its decline. The notes are a vessel for a specific affective state that words cannot fully describe. When he hears the phrase years later, long after his passion has died, it bypasses his intellect entirely and strikes his heart with the precise emotional color of a time he thought was lost forever. It proves that our emotional lives, too, are stored away, waiting for the right vibration to be brought back into being. Music, for Proust, is perhaps the most mysterious and powerful form of involuntary memory, a language that speaks directly from one buried stratum of the soul to another, across the silent, intervening deserts of the years. In Proust's search for lost mortality, we find not answers, but a companion for our own reflections on time's passage. His work teaches that through memory, art, and sensory awareness, we can grasp moments of eternity in a transient world. As we navigate the later chapters of life, let Proust's whisper remind us to embrace the beauty in impermanence, finding solace in the stories we weave and the memories we cherish. Farewell, and may your journey through time be filled with gentle revelations.